Hello, welcome to Writing Quests. My name is Brennan Pugh, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about 5 tips on writing the aha moment, which comes right after the darkest moment in the third act of your story. Let's get into it. Huzzah! Okay, so the aha moment comes right after the darkest moment, as I said in the intro, and it's basically the point where the revelation happens for the character. This is where the character change happens. This whole story from Act 1, Act 2 into Act 3 has been your main character just going on this journey, coming up against obstacles, creating new plans, moving through the story, and what they don't realize is that they're growing and changing at the same time. And so where the darkest moment is kind of the point where the main character is kind of realizing they need to think through some things and they've got to grow and learn. The aha moment is where that learning actually takes place. So we're going to talk about 5 tips on how to write the aha moment. Here we go. Number 1, the main character finally accepts everything that they have learned on their journey. So this is a little nuanced when it comes to writing a series, but for the most part, when this moment happens, your character finally kind of connects all of the dots, connects all the pieces that have been woven through with this journey, and they finally kind of get it all put together and they accept what has happened. So most of the time what's happening through the story is, the story is trying to teach the character a lesson, some things are happening, and they just keep kind of denying it. They keep changing plans, thinking they can control things. And so this is where the main character finally connects all the dots of all the little things that the story has been trying to teach them and the other characters have been trying to teach them, and then accepts them, and then not only accepts them, but then grows and learns from them on how to go forward. So we talked before about how they stopped making plans after the kind of supposed victory and then the darkest moment where they're the disaster, where they're defeated. And so now they finally, after accepting all these things, they learn a bunch of things. Maybe there's some shocking revelations as far as the plot goes, which then gives the main character renewed gusto to continue moving through the story and ultimately going towards the end and the resolution of the story. Number 2, the main character's lesson is deeply personal. Now, if you've been following this series for a while and anything on my channel, we talk a lot about internal conflict. And I believe that if you are writing a good story, that everything ties back to that internal conflict if you really want people to care about your character and care about the things that are going on. So the aha moment needs to be a deeply personal revelation, which ties into their internal conflict. It doesn't necessarily solve the internal conflict. It doesn't necessarily need to change the internal conflict or make it go away or anything. It's just kind of a recognition. It's a deeply personal moment where they realize everything that has happened up to this point is been preying on their internal. It's almost like they finally realize that they have an internal conflict in a way. And of course, when you're writing a series, then as the books continue, as you go into new stories, they develop new internal conflicts and we kind of start the cycle all over again. But number 2 really is all about how do you take the events of the plot and then finally kind of coalesce it into this deeply personal moment for the main character in a way that your reader can really comprehend and attach themselves to it. Because again, that internal conflict is what makes it matter to the character, which then also makes it matter to the reader. Number 3, the lesson solves or overcomes their internal conflict. Now, like I said in number 2, you're not necessarily, getting rid of internal conflict, because especially if you go on a series, you're going to keep they're going to keep having new internal conflicts, new things come up, new stories emerge from those internal conflicts. But it does have to solve that internal conflict in a way, enough so that they can move on and continue with the story. Because if it didn't solve it, then they would continue to be stuck. So, and then the story would be over and they would basically lose, and nobody wants to hear it to lose. So this part is all about how do you have them have this deeply personal revelation, but then it also solves the internal conflict enough for them to move forward. So they may, it's kind of one of those, people can relate to this, of course, where, you're afraid of something, afraid of something, afraid of something. But then finally, if you're doing the work, say it's like public speaking, you eventually come over the fear enough to do the public speaking. Now, you may not be completely unafraid of it, because everyone's afraid a little bit, but it's enough for you to do the thing. So that's kind of where this, it solves the internal conflict, but it doesn't have to solve it completely. It just solves it enough for them to overcome it and move forward, which then develops as you go. If you go into more books into a series, it overcomes it enough, but then they can just keep developing more internal conflicts, and that provides a basis for the rest of your stories. Number 4, it comes from a realization within themselves. Again, this ties back to that internal conflict where they, in their mind, they've been going through the plot, but they finally connect all of the pieces. Another tragedy happens with the darkest moment, and then all these things happen to where they finally, it's like kind of like all the threads that have been woven into their body finally come together and they figure it out. And so the realization really comes from within, and they kind of decide, hey, I know what's happening now. I see the whole big picture. I see everything that's going on. I also know how it affects me in a way that I've been denying before, and now I'm accepting of it. So they realize all these things, and then they move forward. Number 5, they produce the final plan and know what they must do. So before, with the supposed victory, then the disaster and the darkest moment, all of those things kind of, they've been building plans and redoing plans and trying stuff again, and it gets completely destroyed and they end. So now with the aha moment, this is where they finally realize everything that they need to do. They come to grips with that internal conflict, and then they build their next plan and move forward. How are we going to defeat the villain? How are we going to defeat the bad guy? Whatever it needs to be for that plot to end, to go towards the climactic confrontation and the resolution. This is where they develop that plan and move forward. It's kind of like in a heist movie, the heist goes wrong at first, and then this is like the new heist where they finally figure it all out and they pull it off. So they start developing this plan with the other side characters who have probably all had many miniature revelations of themselves. And so this is where that all finally comes together, and then they know what they must do and they move forward. Thanks for watching this episode of Writing Quest. I hope you learned something. Make sure to comment down below. Let's keep the conversation going. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that for more tips like this. We also do book reviews. We talk about software. We talk about a lot of things. So definitely subscribe to the channel if you're interested in all that stuff as we talk about writing. As far as my projects go, I haven't done an update on my own personal writing projects, but we will do that again soon. And I'll update you on everything going on with all those things. If not, if you haven't seen any of my videos or anything, make sure to also subscribe to the newsletter, which I also put updates about my stories in the newsletter as well. The link is in the description below. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time on Writing Quest. Huzzah!